Hello, good morning. We begin with breaking news. Convicted murderer Levi Belfield has admitted in a letter to the murders of mother and daughter Lin and Megan Russell 26 years ago.
What if your entire world collapsed in a single night?
Well, I suppose you could say that it sort of draws a line under this dreadful, dreadful story of Millie's abduction, rape and the subsequent murder.
On July 9, 1996, Sean Russell returned home to find his family missing.
Well, back in September of 2002, when Millie's remains were discovered in the Yateley Heath woods, there was a witness who came forward and was regarded as being credible by the police at the time.
Only to discover that the unthinkable had happened.
We have now received evidence of a full confession by Levi Belfield. He has admitted the Russell murders.
His wife, children, and family dog had been brutally murdered, and the killer was still on the loose. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a shocking twist saved the day. Who survived? Who committed this horrific crime, and why? Don't miss the chilling details of this unsolved mystery. It's a story you won't forget. Family tragedy. On July 9, 1996, Sean Russell came home from work, only to find his house eerily empty. There was no sign of his wife, Lin, or their two children, Josie and Megan, nor their dog, Lucy. Panic set in as Sean desperately tried to reach out to the police, veterinarians, and even the hospital. It had been hours since he last saw them, and with no leads, the sense of dread deepened. By midnight, the police informed Sean that they had found the bodies of his wife, children, and the dog. The shock of hearing the news left him in disbelief. How could someone commit such a horrific act? The quiet village of Chillenden, East Kent, was shaken by the brutal crime. Residents struggled to come to terms with the fact that a family had been brutally murdered just blocks away from where they lived. But even worse, there were no clues, no suspects, and no leads to explain who could have committed such a terrible crime. Little did Sean know, this tragedy would only get worse before it got better. Search begins the next morning, as Sean was still reeling from the news of his family's deaths. The police continued their search in the surrounding rural area. By then, Sean was starting to lose hope. The police had no answers, and no one could understand why this had happened or who would commit such an act. Around 6:00 a.m., Sean received news that would give him a glimmer of hope. The police informed him that while they had previously reported that his family had been found dead, they had discovered a survivor. A young girl, 9-year-old Josie Russell. Though severely injured, Josie was still alive, and doctors were working hard to save her. Sean rushed to the hospital, still unable to grasp the magnitude of what had occurred. His heart raced as he wondered what had happened to Josie, and whether she could give them the answers they so desperately needed. The hunt for the murderer was only just beginning, but Josie's survival was a beacon of hope in the midst of unimaginable grief. Survival miracle. Josie Russell's survival was nothing short of a miracle. Despite the severe injuries she sustained, including traumatic brain damage and multiple blows to the head, she clung to life. When Sean arrived at the hospital, the sight of his daughter, struggling to stay alive, connected to machines, was more than he could bear. Her skull was so damaged that doctors had to perform emergency surgery, inserting a 4-inch titanium plate to reconstruct it. Josie was in critical condition, unable to speak or even recognize her father. Sean's heart broke as he was forced to tell her the unbearable truth. Her mother and sister were gone. The doctors did their best to keep her calm, but the trauma was immense. Still, against all odds, Josie began to recover. The doctors and medical staff were astonished by her resilience, calling her recovery a miracle. Though the physical scars would remain, Josie's will to survive gave everyone hope. But the emotional scars were far deeper, and the path to healing would be long and painful. For now, Josie had survived, but the nightmare of what happened to her family was far from over. The investigation as Josie fought for her life in the hospital. The investigation into the brutal murders of Lin, Megan, and the family dog Lucy was in full swing. The police scoured the rural area around Chillenden for clues, but the scene was eerily quiet. Despite their best efforts, the killer remained at large, and the case seemed to be slipping into the realm of unsolvable mysteries. The police began to question everyone, including Sean. They asked about his family life, his relationship with Lin, and whether there was any reason she might have left with the children. Sean answered truthfully, though he knew these questions were rooted in nothing more than suspicion. The detectives had no leads and no suspects, and the pressure to solve the case grew heavier with each passing hour. Then, a break came when a witness came forward. A neighbor reported seeing a light-colored car near the scene at the time of the murders. Another witness described a man standing by the road, seemingly looking for something. However, there were still no concrete leads. The bloodstained bag found near the scene led to a dead end when the witness failed to identify it as crucial evidence. Despite the lack of solid evidence, the police clung to hope. Every lead was investigated, but it seemed as though the killer was always one step ahead. As the investigation continued, the community remained on edge, unsure if the person responsible for the horrific crime would ever be caught. The breakthrough months passed with little progress, and the case seemed to be at a standstill. Sean moved to North Wales with Josie, who was still unable to speak and struggling with the trauma. The police were beginning to lose hope, but they weren't ready to give up just yet. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Josie herself. Detective Pauline Smith had an idea to help Josie recall the events of that tragic night. She created a model of Josie, her family, and the suspect. The detective then asked Josie to interact with the model, hoping it would trigger memories. Slowly, Josie began to open up. She started to speak more and, over time, recounted the horrifying events of that day. Josie told the police that when she and her family were returning home from the swimming competition, they encountered a man in a car. The man had demanded money, and when her mother explained they didn't have any, he became aggressive. Josie had tried to escape, but the man grabbed her, tied her to a tree, and then attacked her family. Despite her painful memories, Josie's courage gave the investigators the vital information they needed. The police now had a clearer picture of the events, and with this new testimony, they could finally begin to piece together the puzzle. The man responsible for the brutal killings was now within their sights. The investigation into the brutal murder of Lin, Megan, and the family dog Lucy led police to a suspect, 37-year-old Michael Stone. After a year of limited progress, it was a psychologist's report that brought Stone into the spotlight. Stone had made threats to kill an entire family just days before the murders, and a friend had reported seeing him in blood-stained clothes on the day of the crime. When police investigated further, they discovered his appearance matched witness descriptions. Stone's criminal past also raised red flags. He had been in prison for assaulting a man with a hammer and had a history of drug addiction and violence. With this information, the police arrested Michael Stone on July 17, 1997, over a year after the killings. The trial began in October 1998, more than 2 years after the attack. Despite Stone's continued insistence of innocence, the prosecution built its case around the testimony of inmates who claimed to have heard him confess in prison. Additionally, Josie's heartbreaking account of the events provided key evidence. The jury watched the video of Josie describing the attack, which moved everyone in the courtroom. After a 14-day trial, the jury convicted Michael Stone with a vote of 10-2. He was sentenced to 3 life terms for the murders of Lin and Megan and the attempted murder of Josie. Finally, justice was served for the Russell family, and despite the tragedy, Josie was able to move forward, leaving the past behind as she began to heal from her trauma. If you found this story as shocking as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more spine-chilling mysteries. What do you think? Could Josie's survival be the key to solving this case earlier? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't miss our next video. Who was Bible John, Scotland's most elusive serial killer? Coming soon! You won't want to miss it.